Good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you see this. This is Dee with Older INFP-A Assorted Insights. And today we're going to be talking about my view of INFPs in their 30s, which was a request from a viewer. Thank you. I do like to have those in the comments. And just as an FYI, I'm realizing that I'm getting behind on some of the comments. I will get to you. And YouTube is not showing me all the comments in a timely manner. I hope I'm not going to be kicked off eventually, but I will get to your comments, and I do appreciate all of them. So, with that having been said, my view of INFPs in their 30s, and that's all that was said, so I'll just go on about what happens. I'll say that my research is going to be just me. I do not know any INFPs. I live in a very ESTJ world, very high-tech world, where I am, so I don't run into INFPs. And I have come to realize that over the past few years, since I've had this channel, that the major content creators of personality, MBTI particularly, but any of those, which socionics, or it doesn't matter which theory you go on, but they're not INFPs. The only one that I know that's the big one, that's an INFP, is Matt Sherman, and so the rest of them, we have some. There are smaller channels, but the majority of who you're going to be recommended probably in the beginning, if you Google it or whatnot, do a search on YouTube, probably the bigger channels. They are not INFPs. The articles that you read are not written. Overwhelming majority, are not written by INFPs. So I don't want to go by that. And the reason I don't want to go by that, or I don't even look at them anymore, is because they are not INFPs and they don't know us. And can they know us? I say rarely, rarely for this reason. And that is because INFPs are a rare personality type. They're only about 4% of the total population, and not only we're not the rarest personality type, we're one of the rarest, but I think we're the most unique. Probably the way we are, it's hard to describe, but the way we, are, we're hard to pinpoint. And so what you see is the stereotypical stuff that gets regurgitated, and I'm not a regurgitator. I'm not going to do that, and it's incorrect. So I'm going to be just doing, and what I like to do are my own insights. So my research is my personal experience, my life experience. For that reason is because they have no concept of what an INFP is really like, really like. Okay, so that having been said, my research survey tool of one, which is me, and me in my 30s, which was several decades ago, I will have to say, from my observations of other INFPs that I do know online, I don't know any in person, but online, and just what my intuition tells me, because we do a whole lot of extroverted intuition, and I like to, that's my favorite function. So tells me that it's probably a transition decade. And I say a transition decade from childhood moving towards adulthood. I won't say into adulthood, because my 40s, I'm in my 70s, and a lot of times I'm still not in my adulthood in a lot of ways. But it's moving more towards adulthood. I think things start to gel a little better. And what in the world am I talking about? Well, one thing I will agree with, that the so-called experts say, when articles I've read, is that INFPs tend to be late bloomers, and you can take that any way you want, whether it's professionally, emotionally, psychologically, whatever way. Could be all of them. In my case, it was more in one respect, more in one respect. So, and then they kind of came to all together individually. So up until, and then I was thrown into, and like, let's just take profession for it. A lot of people wonder, what do I want to be when I grow up? I'm just hanging out. I'm just doing this. Yeah, I did that. I started working. I had side hustles as a kid. I used to sell bottles at the gas station, pick up bottles on the side of the road. I sold aluminum. Used to pick up aluminum cans. Used to babysit. Used to pet sit. I've done all kinds of things to get money. All types of jobs that you can't make a living that well doing. Been in sales, been in all kinds of things. Minimum wage kind of jobs, fast food, you name it. The typical minimum wage type of jobs, or commission only with tips. I've done all that. Up until I was 40. So I did those kind of jobs. I thought, well, I had in my mind what I wanted to do, but I never acted on it. And I think that's common for INFPs. We know, I think we have an idea what we like to do, even if we don't go for it on our own, or acknowledge it on our own. And now I will say, I have to back up for a little bit, that I'm being general here. I know there's some INFPs who have a career focus and they go straight forward. I think that's more in the minority. I kind of think that is. And let me know in the comments if you always knew what you wanted to be and you went for it, or if you didn't and you kind of stayed in your stereotypical kind of things. You stayed in bed all day, or you hung out, or lived in your parents' basement, or whatever, as an adult. But yeah, I just kind of went with the flow. I had a flow, and then I would tell people, my parents, when I was growing up and a teenager, and even in college, my parents' friends would ask me what I want to be, what am I studying to be, and I always said an educated bum. And I said it as a joke. But, looking back, I think I did that really well. I think as an INFP, educated bum that was more prophetic than I had thought it was at the time. So up until, my 30s, I was kind of an educated bum. And because we all like to learn. And in my 30s, what happened? What was the transition? Well, that was a transitional decade. That was probably my hardest decade, and I was thrown into the world. That's when I had kids. I had kids in my 20s. Had my youngest kid at 31. So in my 30s, I had small children, and once you have kids, they make you get out. Like, they have their own social life, so you have to kind of socialize. You're thrown into the world. You can't stay at home all the time. You have parent-teacher conferences. They have their friends that they want to go see, and then you have to invite their friends over to your house, so you have to deal with other people's kids. And I'm saying that like it was labor, but it was kind of fun to be. I had to be pushed. That's the word, not made to do it. I had to be pushed to be more social, and to get out there in the world, and to do something more than work for commission. I sold one of the things. This is how I did my job. One of the jobs I had for a couple of years was that I sold Tupperware, and Tupperware, I did really well with it, actually. And I arranged to have all my parties in 1 week, and so I had like parties 3 or 4 nights a week, and then I took the rest of the month off. And I made all my money in just a few days, and then I just, so sales did me well. I make my own schedule. My supervisor didn't care for that, but yeah, I just kind of stayed home and did my thing at home, whatever my projects. So number one, if you have kids, I mean, don't go out and have them just to be pushed. But you know what I'm talking about. It gets to the point that they want to socialize, and I was a brownie leader one year, and I have 3 daughters, so they were in brownies for 2 years, scouts, in dance for 1 year. That's all I could do for that. Soccer for 2 years. That's all I could do for that. I took them out after a while. But then we had friends over, and then they went to friends, and they had sleepovers, which, you got to know the parents, which kind of pushed me to get out. So I had that going on. And it was a transition. It was like I said, from childhood to starting to be into adulthood. Childhood being like you can just hang out at home and somebody's going to take care of you. And I was being taken care of at that point in time to my mid-30s. Early 20s to mid-30s, I was married to a man. I just put everything out there. I was, because today anything is possible, so I'm just saying I was married to a man, my kid's father, and neither one of us were happy. It was something that just out of convenience that we got married. It was just something we did, which was, looking back on it, was kind of crazy. Neither one of us had a job when we got married. We had $200 in the bank. We owned a stereo and my 10-speed bike and a car. That's all we owned. And we had, it's funny now, but it was kind of stupid to think about it. But yeah, that was kind of a childish thing to do. But I didn't make enough money in any job I had, I didn't make enough money to support myself. So I was being kept in that way. I mean, I kept the house, I kept the kids, and did things with the kids, and he worked all the time. Until the mid-30s, my mid-30s, 35 actually mid-30s, he came home for lunch one day, which he never ever has done. And he had divorce papers. Just out of the blue here, my youngest was 3, and I hadn't worked outside the home, wasn't working outside the home at all then because of my youngest one did not do well in daycare. It's a long story, but I put her in daycare as soon as she was born, and she got really sick. She was sick the whole year she was in daycare, and I quit my job and took her out and said, well, I'll keep her home until she starts school, and I'll go back to work. So, so she was 3, and the other 2 were in elementary school, but he just came home with papers and said, wanted me gone, just take the clothes on my back and just walk out. And that did not work. So that was a push. That was a push to grow up, because he said, I'm tired of you. I'm coming home and you're just in sweats all the time, and you're just watching TV. You're not doing anything. Well, I am doing anything. I'm doing it in my head. I did things the whole time he was at work. But anyway, I was in sweats all the time. I'd never dressed up. We never went anywhere. So that, I didn't leave with just the clothes on my back. I fought. And he told me later, he said, well, I never thought you had it in you. You surprised me. That's the first mistake with INFPs, and we can go along and we're people pleasers, but I think that's the unhealthy INFPs, the childlike INFPs, and once we're pushed, we got to be pushed. But I haven't always been assertive. No, I was total opposite. I was INFP-T, the turbulent type, for a long time. I think up until that divorce, I had to fend for myself. And he said, so I got a good settlement, got the kids, got the house, got child support, got all this stuff, because he's the one who wanted to leave. He said, well, I never thought you had it in you. So that's the first thing. If you're not an INFP and you're listening to this, don't mistake our kindness for weakness. Don't. Because we have it in us, and when we're pushed, it can come out. So and then I went, at the end of my 30s, I went back to school and got a degree that would pay something. I got a graduate degree. My undergrad degree was in English with a minor in, had all kinds of minors in religion, philosophy, theater, the kind of things that you are really high paid, really high paid jobs. It was fun studying all this stuff, but I had no idea you couldn't get a job with any of it. So I thought, well, I got to get my act in order here. I'm single, and when the kids leave home, I got to be able to support myself. So I got to find a job that pays something. So when I was 40, was when I graduated. The decades of the 30s, I think, can be very transitional for us, and kind of a bridge decade from childhood starting adulthood. So if you're younger and you haven't reached your 30s yet, this is what you can look forward to, and it can be exciting. You may need some nudging. Society's going to start nudging you. If you're not married, you go to family reunions or whatever, and the holidays, or when you're getting married, that kind of thing. I think that pressure is still, I think people still say that. They said that in my generation, but I think they still say that to the younger people. If you are partnered up, you don't have to be married, but partnered up in whatever shape, form, when are you going to settle down? When you're going to have kids? When you're going to buy a home? When you're going to win in winter? I think that pressure's still there. I think it comes more in the 30s as a transitional kind of a decade. My parents died asking me when am I going to get a job, a real job. Because even after I got a career that paid money, I took jobs that were nonprofit, and I loved them, but they were grant funded, and when the grants ran out, my job ran out. So I had a lot of those jobs, but I enjoyed it. But so if you're not, like I said, if you're not in your 30s yet, look for that to happen. Might not, no guarantee it's going to. If you're in your 30s and that's happening, and your life's not all together yet, and it seems like everybody else's is, don't worry about that either. We're INFPs. Takes us longer, and we're on our own plane anyway. I mean, we're at our own pace, and if we can get by just living like we're living, fine. The rest of the world is not coming with us. I found that out. You have to do your own thing. If you want to be happy, you have to do your own thing and not worry. I know it's easier said than done, but not worry what everybody thinks. So it's just a kind of I think a transition, starting to gel together. I know when I was in my 30s, I went to a therapist. Maybe it was 40s. Yeah, it was my early 40s. I went to a therapist, and I was just totally, I thought my life was all mixed up. And she said it must have been really hard to be so accomplished in one area and so immature in another. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, yeah, because it was in my 40s. She said, you're so accomplished in your professional career. You're way up here in what you've done professionally. She said, but socially, you're just a little girl. You're like a little girl, a little kid. And she said that dissonance in that, the disconnect, has got to be really confusing to you and hard. And I'm like, yeah, it is. So that may happen, and let me know if it has happened to you as an INFP. I understand now a lot of it's being INFP, and that's just the way it gels. I think socially, I think the two are kind of, I'm still far behind socially, but not as far as I was back in my late 30s, early 40s. So let me know what you think. That's what I think of, INFPs in their 30s, and see if anybody else has had the same experience, and let me know. I would appreciate that, and it'll start a conversation too. We can start a thread in the comments of having a interaction and conversation, if that's happened to you, or if it's not happened to you, or what do you think the 30s are like? A lot of people, most of the people who view my channel are between the ages of 35 and 45. So you tell me, and let's just see. Okay, so I hope that helps, and until next time, everybody stay safe.